Okay, so if you're watching this in real time, Friday's action of course hasn't started yet, but we're going to be looking ahead to tomorrow's action at Aintree now, Grand National Day of course, and it's a turn of our Grand National connoisseur Phil Turner to run through the card for us.
Yes, indeed. Well, there are lots of other tricky races. If you thought the Grand National was the only tricky betting heat tomorrow, then I'm afraid there are plenty of other ones.
Yeah, nasty shock. And speaking of which, we'll go straight into it with the 145, a wide open Grade 3 Handicap Hurdle. How would you dissect a race like this with 22 runners in?
Well, I actually do like these kind of races normally, but this one does seem particularly tricky. And we've also got the added sort of spanner in the works that there's been sort of rain today, and it could be quite testing, and that sort of might put the emphasis more on stamina than you might have thought, and that really sort of ties into, if we deal with the top rated, and there are two horses in focus in this race who are all interesting for those reasons, but that sort of fear about the sort of stamina test is slightly putting me off them. The two horses in focus both ran in the same race at Cheltenham. They're Dreamberry and Mr. Big Shot. Caught the eye in no uncertain terms down the field in that, and you know, if they went into your notebook, then I certainly wouldn't really be wanting to put you off. They're handicapped to win, we think, or certainly competitively handicapped. But they're both unproven at the trip, and although I kind of think they should stay, the fact it could be more testing than you'd usually expect, and they are sort of towards the head of the market, I probably would give them a swerve for that reason. Similar, stamina's not the issue with DBC, who actually is the top rated, and he gets that figure from finishing a really good third in the Sefton over course and distance at last year's meeting, but hasn't been seen since, and there's just a sort of doubt about the long absence, whether the fact, I was kind of hoping he'd be a bigger price than he is. He's among the favourites because he's not necessarily from a fashionable yard, but as I say, at the prices I would probably be looking for a couple of sort of bigger each way prices and take the chance on that, given the fact it might sort of throw up a funny result. And the two I go for will be Connectable and Shannon Bridge, and they're both coming at from different angles here really. Connectable's fully exposed, doesn't win very often, and to be honest I'd kind of be a little bit surprised were he to win, but I'd be fairly hopeful he could sort of finish in the money again. He's struck up a very good relationship with Harry Cobden. He seems to run all his best races for him, and he nearly caused a big shock in the Pertemps final, ran a huge race in that, up in the vans throughout, sort of dictating things a little bit. They didn't go overly fast. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried something similar tomorrow, and yeah, I'd be hopeful of him finishing in the first 4 or 5 or whatever terms you can get for the each way markets. The other one, Shannon Bridge, there's the potential here he might actually sort of be good enough to improve through to win. Things were going swimmingly with him until his last start. You've got a bad run to excuse from last time, but he ran in that meeting at Haydock where the ground was absolutely bottomless, and it came quite soon on the back of a fairly tough run at Doncaster. We think we can forgive him that. He's still got to pay on. I think there's still improvement to come. And if you get back to that Doncaster run, he was beating the short head in the River Don, graded novice, and he actually posted a really big time figure that day. Horses behind have come out and franked the form since, and as I say, if he can get back on the upward curve, he could be interested in about 16 to 1. There'd be slight doubts. Obviously, I know he got bogged down in the mud at Haydock last time, but as I say, there's heavy, and then there's Haydock heavy from that day. His previous runs have been in soft. You'd be hopeful the ground wouldn't be too much of an issue. And just the Skelton Yard, they tend to sort of target these type of races. They've got 3 runners in it, and this is the choice of Harry Skelton. So I'd be hopeful of a sporting run from him at 16 to 1.
Okay, so Connectable and Shannon Bridge in the first, and we'll move on to the Mersey Novices Hurdle now. And you talked about 2 horses there with different profiles. At the top of the market, we've again got 2 horses with different profiles in Blackhop, who of course was a runner-up in the Ballymore at Cheltenham, and then on the blind side, who we haven't seen since Sandown in December.
Yeah, and of course they probably would have met at Cheltenham, wouldn't they, because he was going to go for the same race as him. Look, I hate to sort of narrow it down to 2 horses, but I'd be very surprised if one of these 2 didn't win. They're very, very likeable, really imposing sorts, and in a way it's kind of a bit of a flip of a coin, and the fact that on the blind side is trading at the bigger price, I'd go for him. I think I probably would have gone for him going to Cheltenham anyway. he just seems to keep finding, and provided he's none the worse for that absence, the fact he's sort of come here relatively fresh, that's not knocking Blackhop at all. Let's say he's a very, very likeable horse, and okay, he's got 2 second places against his name, but he probably should have won the race against Santini, and then no disgrace behind Sam Crow at Cheltenham last time. But on the blind side, still unbeaten, and he's got such a winning attitude, and he's won round here before. He would be my sort of narrow side of the pair. As I say, he's trading the bigger price. I think you can get about 94 at the minute. I'd go with him. Having narrowed it down to sort of 2, it's sort of, you can't really sort of play much for an each way angle at a bigger price really, because you might be just looking for one place, couldn't you? I could see Western Rider as a double figure price. I think he might appreciate being back up to this sort of trip. He's done most of his running over shorts, and he ran in the Supreme. I think he'll be better served by 2.5 mile trips, and perhaps even further in time. But as I say, if they're fitting well, I'd be a bit surprised if On the Blind Side or Blackhop don't win, and I'm going for the Nicky Henderson horse.
I'm just looking at the rest of the field. When do the declarations come through? Is it around? Have they come through yet, or is it about 2 o'clock for tomorrow?
Oh no, it's all done.
It's all. Oh right.
Yeah.
Well, just looking at Exton Lane at 25 to 1. He's been progressive. Probably a pitch too high there in Grade 1 level.
Well, I'd have thought so. I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of these they're nice horses, but it's just you know, there are different levels, and I just think the form's already in the book of the top 2, and as I say, provided they run, we'd be fairly confident one of them's going to run to that figure, and you're really asking a lot of improvement from some of the ones trading at bigger odds to sort of get there and beat them.
A fine place, Exton. So into the Maghull Novices Chase Grade 1 action again. Petit Mouchoir at the top of the market here. Probably went off a bit too quick in the Arkle.
I think you can probably be a bit stronger than probably. He definitely did. But in fairness to Davy Russell, I don't think it was all his sort of own doing. This horse is quite headstrong. He tends to get worked up in preliminaries, so I guess he was always going to do that. And then the presence of the other horse, St Calvados, just probably sort of egged it on. I think if he's allowed his own way, it'll be more controlled. And I just think he's the best horse in the field. He's odds on. There are plenty of likeable horses up against him. Lady Buttons, the mare, she's been very good so far with fences. I was a bit surprised to see that she's trading shorter than Diego de Charmille, but no, she's done nothing wrong. She'll be able to pick up the pieces. Similarly, Diego de Charmille, he jumped absolutely superbly at Ascot last time, and he ended up with an F on his record. He fell at the third last, and he didn't touch a tree even at that. I still don't quite know how that happened. You know, he achieved a good standard over hurdles, but if physique's anything to go by, he'll do even better over fences. So I guess he would be the main threat to Petit Mouchoir, but hopefully he can get back on track. I mean, it depends what kind of punter you are. He's odds on, and it's a novice chase, and you know, if you like playing weighing with big money at those, then be my guest. But as I say, he should win if he sort of just is a bit more controlled from the front this time.
I was just about to say, actually, do you think we're in the territory of Petit Mouchoir that perhaps the biggest danger is himself, or is it unfair to the rest of the field?
No, I think there were circumstances behind that race, and he was probably he's not looked a head case before that.
No, I mean,
he's played up in the preliminaries, but it's not.
It's not Dublin.
Yeah, but it's not affected. Even in that race, he ran really well.
He did run really well, yeah.
And he's got plenty of he's got a couple of seasons now, sort of solid efforts in Grade 1, so I wouldn't say he's on the edge temperamentally.
Okay, into another Handicap Chase, Grade 3 again, and we've got one at the top of the market here in Thomas Patrick, who's a real progressive stayer. Yeah,
I really like this horse, and I'm sorry to tip another favourite, but he's my idea of probably the sort of best bet tomorrow. Stable Tom Lacey's just had a fantastic last couple of months, and this could kind of be his headline performer. He was very good in a race at Chepstow. The runner-up stepped back, and his stamina won him that day. He was really, really good. Posted a really good time figure. Step back's come out and won since. I think that's strong form. He then disappointed slightly at Exeter. in a sort of long distance chase, but it transpired I think he pulled 2 shoes off. There was excuses behind it.
Was that the race that Yanmare won, and it was absolutely?
I think it was. I think it was. I can't. I'm afraid I can't remember the winner, but it was a different race. I think Shot Companion, but I can't remember the name of the winner. Anyway, but he then got right back on track at Newbury last time, and it was a fantastic display of jumping for a horse who's relatively inexperienced, certainly on the rules. And I think hopefully with Touchwood a similar ride tomorrow. Richard Johnson was very positive on that day. Gets him into a rhythm, and all he does is stay. And I think again, the reason I keep mentioning staying, I think that is the issue here. There's a fair number in this race at bigger prices you could make cases for, but there's slight doubts about whether they'll last home. A horse like On Tour, who's run well round Aintree before and is potentially well handicapped, but I'd have my doubts about the trip even on sort of top of the ground. Castet of Gary Moore's, that shaped really well for a long way in the Ultima at Cheltenham last time. Definitely one you want to be interested in a race like this, but again there'd be the slight doubts whether he'd be able to last home. And as I say, he's a very solid horse. I mean, probably the sort of main danger is another novice, Rocklander of Tom George's, who ran very well at the Cheltenham Festival. But I just think if he reproduces what he did at Newbury last time, I just see this race will just sort of play to his strengths. And no, very, very keen on Thomas Patrick.
Wakanda perhaps one to note at a bigger price. He had his form frank yesterday by Lamy Serge.
Well, Wakanda's has been in solid form until his last run. He flopped last time. You've got to forgive that, but there'll be no doubts on the sort of trip with him. And we know he's a solid performer. Yeah, he probably would be the each-way angle if you're looking for one who's guaranteed to stay. And I think he's about 14, so I wouldn't put anyone off him. But as I say, we think we know the level of Wakanda, whereas Thomas Patrick's doing that. And as I say, provided he just turns up in the same sort of form he was at Newbury, I'd be very disappointed if he doesn't win really, but certainly doesn't finish in the frame.
Okay, the Liverpool Hurdle up next. I get all these names mixed up: Mersey, Aintree, Liverpool. It's but yeah, the Stayers hurdle this, and Sam Spinner's top of the market, 5th in the Stayers last time. But will this course and race be more to suit, perhaps?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the main problem at Cheltenham was they just didn't go quick enough. And I mean, it's been a heartwarming story. The whole fact that it's the unfashionable connections, small trainer, small jockey, if you like, an unfashionable jockey doesn't get many chances, and it's great and you want to see them win, but when you put your punter's hat on, it's sort of, you think, well, hang on, he doesn't ride in these races normally, and there's a chance that sort of that lack of experience at that level possibly cost him at Cheltenham. And the sort of slight fear is the same may happen tomorrow. The fact they went too slow at Cheltenham, does it mean they'll go too quick at Aintree and overcompensate? So I was kind of hoping to sort of take him on, but the field doesn't look particularly strong. To be honest, he should win really. I'm not sure I'll be rushing to have a bet on him at 64, but he should win, provided he gets the fractions right. I mean, as I say, I mean, despite things going wrong at Cheltenham, he didn't jump as well as he normally does, and basically turned it into a sprint. He still finished. Did you say he was 5th or 6th?
Fifth, yeah.
So, and he's got a very likeable attitude. Provided he sort of lets him roll and gets him into a rhythm out in front, he should win on what we've seen this season. If I was having a bet in it, it would actually be on old Lamy Serge, who I just presume is not going to run, having won on Thursday. But were he to turn up, I'd have an each way go on him at the longer chip, because we know he's absolutely thriving. That was a really good performance of the day, and he's got close to him before. As I say, he tends to get, despite yesterday, he tends to get out of winning races, but I think I'd rather play him at around 9-10 to 1 than go in at 6 to 4. But I say, very likeable horse, and on form he should win.
Could you make any sort of case for the World's End? It hasn't really been at it this year, but won at this meeting last year.
He did win at this meeting last year, but it was quite a sort of bunched finish. He's, to be honest, he's probably done okay this year. That's kind of his level, and I wouldn't say, even though he won at the meeting last year, I don't think he's an Aintree horse as opposed to some of the other courses he's run out. He's acquitted himself fairly well in those races. He just might not be. He's quite up to that level. He looks all over a chaser, really, just get him over fences, and then he might beat some of these horses were they to meet further down the line, because he looks like he'll sort of come into his own once he goes over the larger obstacles. I mean, Holstone's probably sort of main danger on the betting, because he did actually beat Sam Spinner last time, and he's very, very consistent. But as I say, I think from the form earlier in the year, Sam Spinner should have enough in hand to beat these.
Okay, there's a unknown race called the Grand National up next. If you haven't already seen it, Phil and Jamie Lynch did a 2 videos on it yesterday, not just one, did 2. So we'll only touch on it now, and I don't know. I'll open the floor. Is there which one is standing out on Timeform ratings here?
Well, it's still. I mean, as I say, we've gone through all 40 runners, so I'm not ignoring. If you've got a fancy in it, go and look at the video, and you can see what we think
in every detail.
Total Recall is. Look, he fell at Cheltenham last time, and for a lot of people that'll be enough to put them off. I understand that. It's the Grand National, and I don't think he's got fundamental jumping issues. I think he can be quite keen. I just say, if he'd been running in the race Thomas Patrick's running in, if the same field was running in that race off the same marks as they are in the National, I think Total Recall will be a 3 or 4 to 1 favourite, and he's a double figure price. By all means, there are risks attached with him because he's fallen and he's unproven over the trip. But of the informed horses, he's by far the best handicapped in my eyes. And as I say, I think he's good value at that price. And you just hope for the best. If he can settle, I think for 90% of the way he could find it very, very easy. And the way he saw things out at at Newbury, winning the Ladbrokes race, that would give you more confidence than most that he'd stay if the ones were improving at the trip. So no, look, he's just basically not stopped improving ever since joining the Willie Mullins yard, and I'm surprised he's still the price he is. You can get 11, 12 to 1, and I think that's good value. Of the others, I mean, like, we seem to be able to get first 5 nowadays with bookies, so I would probably go with, I've already backed Uccello Conte. I think he's been overpriced in the months leading up to it, of Gordon Elliott's. Probably a bit surprised if he could win it, but he's got a very solid record in these big handicaps, and the fact they keep coming back here. I think he's been a bit forgotten in the build-up to the race. I think the last Samurai should give another good run for the money over the course. He's been placed 3 times over these fences and will certainly appreciate it becoming a proper stamina test with any rain. And then just 2 at bigger prices who might run well. Alpha de Zobo of Mouse Morris's. He's a bit in and out, but there are 2 or 3 runs this season where you give him a chance off his current mark. And just one other one, I mean, it's funny enough, it's a race where there aren't that many of them who are coming into it on the back of a really good effort. And one of them who is Shantou Flyer with James Bowen. He ran well last time, and the way he saw it out at Cheltenham, admittedly over a much shorter trip, will give you some hope that stamina is what he needs nowadays. So I think he can still. Can you still get about 33s for him?
Yeah, 33 to 1.
Yeah, as I say, look, he's a horse. We know he's in form. There may be the odd better handicap one in there, but he's, he comes into the race on the back of a good effort, and there are surprisingly few you can say that about. So I thought he might be another one to say, but absolutely, Total Recall's the main bet.
One angle I will touch on very, very quickly, because I don't think we really did yesterday, just touched on it, is that 2 have come out, Vicente and Minella Rocco, which brings in Thunder and Roses and Delusion of Grandeur. Do either of them appeal?
Thunder and Roses, Delusion of Grandeur is a very nice, he's a very likeable horse, but he had quite a tough race at Haydock just recently.
Heavy again there.
Yeah, it was heavy again, and they probably didn't think they were going to get in. Funnily enough, one of the other reserves was a Sue Smith horse, Vintage Clouds. I'd have fancied him a lot more. He also didn't seem to stay at Musselburgh in that long distance race earlier in the year, so I'd have slight doubts about the trip with Delusions of Grandeur. Thunder and Roses, I wouldn't have doubts about the trip, and of the pair, I'd say he's the more interesting, even though you've got to forgive him a lot. I think he's fallen on his last 2 starts. He fell quite heavily and quite early on in the Irish National last time, but he is an Irish National winner, and although his runs are very his good runs are very few and far between, they do tend to come in races like this, and I certainly would forgive him. He unseated in last year's National when he was effectively brought down by a loose horse. Now, it was early on, it was first Valentine's, but he seemed to have taken to it. He was up with the leaders and he seemed to be enjoying himself, so he might outperform his odds. But as I say, you've got to forgive a lot because there are a lot of letters next in his form figures, but he's probably got a better chance than some others trading at the odds he's like to be.
Okay, one to go then, the Conditional Jockeys race, Handicap Hurdle this, 19 go to post, and Chesterfield's the favourite, was fourth in the county last time.
He was, and he won this race last year, and it's actually a really good race. There's lots of multiple winners in this race who've been in fine form this season. So I'm a bit loath to sort of be going for the top two in the betting, but because you think there must be sort of value sort of further down the list. But Chesterfield, yeah, I mean, he came to life last spring. He won this race before going on to win the Scottish Champion Hurdle, and it looks like the same's happened this time around. He won a jumpers bumper, beaten some good horses.
Easy Bear that day.
Yeah, and then went on to run really well at massive odds in the county hurdle. Although Daniel Sampson wouldn't necessarily be the best jockey in this conditionals race, the advantage he's got over all of these, he rides his horse all the time, and I think that can be a factor in these races. Most of these jockeys won't have ridden these horses before, and so they don't know if they're going too quick or too slow or whatever. But he knows Chesterfield down the ground, and with Stern Rubin in the field and a few others, there's likely to be plenty of pace. I think it'll be absolutely set up for Chesterfield. And look, he should be there or thereabouts. I think he's 5-6 to 1. To be honest, that's probably a decent price. He's fairly exposed, but as I say, he won the Scottish Champion last year, and he's still here off a £2 lower mark than that. So he's got a chance on the figures as well. One who's far less exposed over hurdles is Michaels Mounds, who was third in the Dove Cup, makes his handicap debut here. James Bowen's on board. Ian Williams, the stable's going really, really well at the minute, so he's bound to be among the favourites. I was a bit surprised he's not favourite in the early tissue, but I think he's about 7-8 to 1. Yeah, he makes plenty of interest in that. So they were the two I'd picked out before I'd seen the sort of early tissues, and I still think they're the sort of two most interesting. If you wanted one stab in the dark at a much bigger price, Solo Tenteef of Colin Tizard's. You've got to forgive him a lot because he's got a squiggle and he fully deserves it, because he just tends to flatter to deceive all the time, doesn't see his races out. But there were high hopes entertained for him a lot earlier in his career. He's had a gap since Christmas, so he'll be coming here fresh, and we've seen quite a few Tizard horses at last year's meeting and this year's meeting just suddenly spark back into life after either having a break or even having some bad runs. So he's got a decent condition. Richard Patrick claiming 5 off him. He just might sort of do better than 25 to 1. He could be pulled up. There's probably going to be very little in between. He'll either run well or run abysmally. And just one other one, there's a juvenile, Broughton's Admiral, just slightly out the weights. But again, he might outperform his odds as well if you were looking for bigger ones. But I do like the top two in the betting, Chesterfield and Michaels Mounds.
Back as a Chesterfield, I'll have to hope that he's more fruitful than the football team. They're having a torrid old time.
Oh, they are. Well, I've got as an Evertonian, I'm trying to avoid football at the minute. So.
As a Wigan Athletic fan, I'm not. Glorious times. Well, thank you very much for that, and you'll have an article on the microsite a bit later on.
A bit later on, yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you very much.